Chapter 9: Strong Feelings. Caleb was feeling ever more confident with his schoolwork. His days were now more enjoyable, and he often found himself looking forward to learning new things. A nicer feeling than the dread he used to experience. Once again, the day had gone quickly. He had struggled a bit during the noon-hour tutoring session, but reasoned that it was probably because his mind kept going back to his last conversation with Blaze. Blaze had made it quite clear that there was something about Grace that made her special. He had found himself wondering about that all day, glancing at her during class, when he could do so unnoticed. She had been a good friend for as long as he could remember. Their families had often gone camping together from when they were very young. Thinking back to their many adventures brought a smile to his face. He, Grace, and Asher would spend hours in the woods building forts from broken tree limbs and leafy branches, sometimes including Asher's younger sister Bowie. He recalled the day when they were pretending to be treasure hunters, looking for gold and jewels. Everything was fine until part of their treasure came alive and slithered around Grace's ankle. The sounds of 4 children screaming had brought Grace and Asher's Grampy Rick running to the rescue. Later, sitting by the campfire, they'd learned it had just been a garter snake, completely harmless, and they had nothing to worry about. Nonetheless, Caleb recalled, adventures after that day involved staying a little closer to the campsite. Soon, Caleb found himself with Blaze again at the library. He had already decided that there were some things about the events of the day before, and video A8 that he had watched, that he wanted to talk to Blaze about. He thought Blaze would be a little more willing to discuss that to begin with, rather than his ongoing questions about MAs and what was special about Grace. All the talk about setting lifetime goals had him thinking a little more about his own path to the future. He could see what Blaze was doing, so he wondered what he should be setting in terms of lifetime goals, and whether it even mattered. Blaze cleared it up for him. You know, Caleb, one thing you will find is that the future is alterable. As events change, slight things, or even not so slight things, about the future, change. You already know that much of what I've talked to you about is dependent on what you do. What if you decided it was all too much work and you would not try to enact clever quick in your life at all, and therefore not meet the success that seems to be in your future? Blaze asked. There would be a different future for me? Caleb responded. That's for sure, but not just you. Many others, and even certain aspects of the whole planet, would be affected, Blaze added. You can obviously figure out what the best course of action is. And that leads to your question about lifetime goals. You most definitely should set some up. And don't just look at me now. The future as we see it now could change. Not everything is in our control. You need to be ready for anything. Just as I advised Grace yesterday, and you saw with Priya's friend Summer in the video, you should be setting up long-term goals with a lifetime goal in mind. Right, but Mr. Costa had mentioned that the lifetime goal may change, Caleb interjected. Absolutely, since there may be opportunities that you couldn't even imagine at this point in your life. Like I said, you need to be ready for anything. You know, when you set a really big goal, one that is quite far off, you need to know that you will have to be constantly adjusting things with your short and long-term goals, Blaze added. I'd like to say that I understand what you just said, but I don't. Caleb admitted. No problem, let's talk about the path that airplanes take to get to their destinations. Blaze responded. Caleb looked up with a questioning facial expression. Don't worry, you'll get it. Think of a plane that takes off from Vancouver, bound for Singapore. I can tell you that the plane will be actually off course more often than it is on course. Leaving Vancouver, the pilots plot in the main course and off they go. But then there are winds, storms, other planes, mountains, countries with restricted airspace, etc. that get in the way, and cause the plane to veer off its set course. Regularly, the pilots, or some automatic navigating systems, need to plot a new set of directions to get to the planned destination. Those are course corrections. They happen over and over and over again. It's the same in life. You may make the best decisions possible at a particular point in your life, but you need to be constantly monitoring the day-to-day effects and adjust your short and long-term goals as necessary, keeping a distant destination in mind. Unlike the plane though, you can decide to change your destination if you like. That is what Mr. Costa was getting at in his discussions with Summer. Blaze concluded and Caleb sat for a moment before responding. I get it, Blaze, thanks, Caleb nodded. I suppose I need to get to my work now. As he started taking his books out from his backpack, Blaze surprised him by putting out his hand and stopping him. Today we continue talking, Blaze began. There are some more things you need to know and there isn't a lot of time. Surprised, Caleb eyed Blaze. Sounds good to me, where do we start? Caleb asked. Well, I know the things you are wondering about, so I'll just get right to them, Blaze continued, as Caleb leaned forward, focused on Blaze's every word. First, some more about MAs. I mentioned that they could be frightening as well as incredible. Let me explain. You've heard about how it has revolutionized the learning of new things, but there's more to it. It isn't only used to implant information. It's also used to suppress or cloud images and thoughts in your memory. It can be used to cause people to temporarily forget huge chunks of their knowledge and understanding. I won't go into great detail now, but you need to know that when first discovered, great care had to be taken to keep it for the common good. There were a number of folks, even some in leadership positions, who saw the whole process as a way of manipulating people to change perceptions of reality. I won't go into great detail now, but in the future you will need to be cautious and make sure that people remain focused on the good of the planet and not on personal gain. It's a whole area of science in the future that grew out of the study of hypnosis and, surprisingly enough, the advertising industry, along with social media experiments. In fact, there were some pretty horrific things that happened early on in the development of that science. It put a whole new spin on the term to lose one's mind. Those early experiences led to very careful government regulations. No one is permitted to practice the science of MAs unless they have received extensive training and are licensed. There are very serious penalties if the untrained use these procedures. Used for good, these parts of the MA procedure can be very useful, especially when combined with time travel. Our older self, from age 28, has become licensed with this tech. One good use is to make adjustments to the future by sorting information in the past times. There's actually a fairly extensive program going on right now, in this time period. Selected individuals are being informed of changes that are needed to ensure we have a future as a human race. But we can't just drop information about the future and expect things to work out. If people actually knew the details of what was at stake, they would probably crumble under the pressure. There's a fine line between benefiting from information you have about the future and being too scared or worried about what lies ahead. Imagine knowing every detail about what comes ahead. You would overthink everything you do, and you might actually change the future in many unpredictable ways. So, that's where MAs come into play. Information is presented, followed by an MA where the memories are shrouded. They don't disappear, they're just buried. You don't have full, easy recall of the details, but the feelings and motivations, the gut feelings as it were, that are the result of the memories, are fully in effect. People's actions follow, based on their feelings, but without all the details which might cause difficulties. I've learned a lot about the future, mostly from our 28-year-old self. Some of it I have full recall of, but much of it has been shrouded by MAs. The result are some very powerful feelings about certain things that I'm aware are connected to information and things I know. I just can't recall the details. So, what you said about Grace being special, what did you mean? Asked Caleb. Now that's interesting. I know you're going to feel a little shocked with what I'm going to say next. I can tell you some specific things about Grace in my time, but it's things about Grace in the years beyond mine that I know are truly amazing. I only have general gut feelings about that part of the future. 2 years ago, by my time. So that would mean, 6 years into the future, your time. She left to go to medical school on the other side of the continent. We've remained great friends and I see her when she's back visiting family. I don't want to scare you, but we've sort of become a couple, and you might even refer to us as boyfriend and girlfriend." "What? No. Really?" shrieked Caleb. "Absolutely true. I know because I'm living it. As for further into the future, all I have are very strong feelings, as I said. I'm pretty sure we're still together when we're 28, but I don't know details. I also have an extremely strong feeling that grace is a key component in the victory of mankind over climate change. Care for the Earth is a major focus in the future. As I had mentioned, things had gone quiet at a point beyond our 28-year-old self. Well, with the changes made in the next 8 to 16 years, the climate issues get resolved and suddenly our older self has heard from generations into the future. What I know is that grace is a big part of that, and so are we. I just can't recall the details. So, you and I are very special, and so is Grace. Asha also plays an important part, but more on that later. The future of the world largely rests in our hands. Now, Caleb, you have a lot of information about what's to come in the future. Let it sink in for a bit. We can talk later about the possibility of shrouding those memories, if it would make you be able to relate to things a little more naturally, especially with Grace. The technical term for that in future times is ghosting the memories. It is a lot to take in, and a lot to live with. Are you able to perform an MA? Asked Caleb. Well, technically, no. It would be against the law if we were in the time of our 28-year-old self. But he's given me the training, and since the laws of my time don't say anything about that, I suppose I could. Replied Blaze. Wait, didn't you say something about people losing their minds when this was being developed? Caleb responded. Well, yes, when the experiments were first undertaken, but we're well past that point now. Ah, well, actually they still won't happen for a number of years. But you know what I mean, Blaze stated. Yes, Blaze, I get the idea. And it's not like I'd be your first subject, right? Caleb laughed. Blaze looked serious. He definitely wasn't laughing. You have done this before, right? Caleb asked, suddenly very alert. Ha. Well, of course I have. Just not on a human, Blaze replied. What? Caleb howled. It worked fine on the farm animals we tried it on, Blaze reacted. Huh? Caleb said, stunned into silence for a moment, before a thought shook him awake. Wait. How would you even know it worked on animals? I haven't told you about the translation collars, have I? Add that to the list of things I need to explain. You know, all things considered, it's probably best if we waited just a little longer before playing with your mind. Let's leave you with those memories for now, Blaze replied. You think, Blaze? Caleb muttered, covering his eyes with his hand. I do. Now, something else you should know. Grace is going to meet with us soon. She's going to have figured things out and we'll need to let her in on all of this future stuff. Blaze continued. You're kidding? Caleb responded, startled. Nope. It has to be this way. I told you. You and I, and Grace and Asha, are all extremely important for the future of the human race. Speaking of which, saving the world is going to require your learning skills to be at maximum. So, you need to get as much as you can out of Clever quick. The optional resources in video A9 contain the FutureLoop survey, FL3. It includes a tally for the week, along with questions about weekly schedules. The tally will involve you tracking your time used through a whole week. There is an activity list that has categories and letter codes for you to put on your tally. On the first part of the survey, you will be estimating the time you spend on activities in each of the categories. On the last part, you'll be tracking your actual hours spent. It's all to prepare you for creating a weekly schedule that will help you keep variety in your life as you strike a balance between schoolwork and the other important things in your life, like your family, friends, and activities. So, take a few minutes, watch the video now and complete the first 2 pages of the survey. You will need to complete pages 3 and 4 at home over this next week. Here's the link, and here's a copy of the survey. Blaze pushed several pages across the table. Before you know it, Grace will be here, Blaze added.